Alright, hello everybody. Today I want to be talking about why I'm going to be switching to Resto Druid, and there's two main reasons for this. One, Resto Druid's toolkit is absolutely amazing, and I'll kind of go over that quickly as to why. But the second reason is that there is not really much reason to actually bring a priest healer into your raid at the moment. Other than the fact that Holy and Discipline do quite well in their overall throughput, their actual style of healing does not fit at least my raid comp, and is really kind of a hindrance on our raid at the moment. So I mean, the first thing obviously is Discipline. So Discipline right now, it was decent in our raid comp because burst AoE healing was something that our raid comp needed. With 2 Holy Paladins and a Resto Shaman, burst AoE healing is what our group needs. And with the changes to Discipline, the whole design goal being to reduce the number of atonements you can have out, Discipline is no longer a burst raid healer. Discipline is a 10 target healer. Now, while that is going to cause a lot of issues for the Discipline Priest, you're going to see the Discipline Priest go from something where right now Discipline is amazing at healing pretty much every boss, because every boss has a large amount of raid damage. That is why Discipline is good at healing right now, because every boss works well for the Discipline Priest. But they're going to be changing that, so rather than being able to heal an entire raid, you're going to be able to heal part of the raid. Now, what raid boss only damages part of the raid? Almost none. So Discipline's going to kind of be in this spot where it's going to be what it's good at is not going to appear in a lot of bosses, or if any boss at all. So it might do good healing, it might do good throughput, but you just not being able to spread your healing to the people who need it, adapt your playstyle, adapt what healing you can put out, is going to be a problem, and it's going to be a hindrance to bringing a Discipline Priest in your core raid team. So that's my problem obviously with Discipline, and going forward I see problems for Discipline. So why would I be interested in playing it if it's going to be causing those things? And especially because as we see the DPS scaling, getting further and further, the damage disc is doing becomes less and less relevant. We didn't really see any Discipline Priest picked up in Nighthold at all to meet damage checks. We essentially just saw people dropping healers, and that is pretty concerning. Because you'd think that the one good thing that Discipline is good for is, meeting those DPS checks on Croesus, meeting those DPS checks on Elisand. But that wasn't really a thing at all. You never saw any of the top end guilds pick up the one healing spec that does do a significant amount of damage. They just essentially went with the option of either dropping a healer or just doing more DPS. So we don't see, and especially because of how Discipline's damage now is pretty much irrelevant in compared to what a DPS can do. I mean, you can see these like Gul'dan meters right now. Like if you're doing 200k DPS as a Discipline Priest, it doesn't matter. So yeah. Now with Holy is a good healing spec. Holy does quite a good number of things. Has a lot of burst healing. Has a 30-second cooldown on Serenity essentially. Holy has a little bit going for it, but the thing is, if you stack up its toolkit side by side with what a Resto Druid can do, it gets blown out of the water. Absolutely blown out of the water. And I don't think anyone can, with any reasonable knowledge of how a Resto Druid works, or have played any other healing spec with actual utility, can argue that Holy Priest has good utility. The only good thing Holy Priest really has for it, as I was saying, was pretty consistent burst healing, and that comes in the form of obviously Sanctify, and then following up with some prayer of healing. As Holy, you can dump out some mana pretty quickly and do quite a large amount of healing, but that's not really something that our raid comp needs. And the other problem with it is that Sanctify is pretty limited to really stacked up groups of people. Now, with our raid group, when we have 2 Paladins and a Shaman, our healing on melee or stacked targets is very high. So it is not something that, bringing an extra Holy Priest will essentially do anything. Using that Sanctify on your melee group, or using that Sanctify on a stacked range group, is essentially just going to be your overhealing, or someone else in your raid group's overhealing. Because you're going to get 2 Paladins using Light of Dawn regardless. You're going to get your Resto Shamans using their Healing Rain regardless. They're going to be using Chain Heal regardless of what you do. So, having a Holy Priest isn't really very fitting or the best fit for our raid comp. So the other problem with Holy Priest obviously is that it can't do healing on the move. Now I noticed this a lot when we're doing botanist progression. You know, when a Void Nova, whatever those purple circles are called, when they come out, I remember there's one overlap where there's the orbs that blow up, and then there's a purple circle on the ground immediately afterwards. And I remember the second we used to raid with a Resto Druid, we picked up the Resto Shaman. I remember getting to that spot twice and just dying just randomly all of a sudden, just because we didn't have any healing on the move, and that's purely because we dropped a Resto Shaman for a Resto. We dropped our Resto Druid for our Resto Shaman, just because our Resto Druid couldn't make it that night. So, you know, it's not really something you notice unless you don't play with a Resto Druid, but you know, when some movement mechanic comes out, literally our raid comp, our healing goes to 0, except for our Resto Shaman if they have their Spirit Walker's Grace up, which, you know, does cause problems and does cause inconsistency. So just being able to move and heal constantly is fantastic. So, you know, that's the main reasons to why I'm actually switching from a Druid. It's just because Priest doesn't fit our raid comp at the moment, and Priest is kind of lacking in the utility department, which, you know, shouldn't be a surprise to pretty much anyone. So, you know, if we want to be looking at the Resto Druid right now and why it's so strong, you know, you can look at pretty much the counterpoints to what is pretty much counters every bad thing that Holy has. So, you know, Holy right now, you know, can't do pretty much any healing on the move. Resto Druid can do pretty much all of its healing on the move. Resto Druid can, you know, have a very good number of defensives. So, you know, you can go into Bear Form, you can pop Frenzied Regen, you can pop Barkskin, you've even got an Iron Buck, which is, you know, strictly better than Guardian Angel. You've got a lot more mobility in terms of dash and cat form and Displacer Beast. You've got a lot of preemptive healing with the Rejuve Shoulders, so you can, you know, on Gul'dan. When I was playing my Priest, Empowered Hellfires would be a problem for the Hunters that would stand at max range and would be out of healing range. What I can do as a Druid is I can go next to them, I can hot them up, I can put, you know, 2 Rejuves on every Hunter before any hit comes in, and then they're going to be good for essentially that whole Empowered Hellfire phase. They get, you know, someone dips a little bit low, I can cast my my Wild Growth back on them, and I can go back and stand in the center. You know, another counterpoint to that is that you have the affinities. If I need to have extra range to hit hunters standing at max range, I can take Balance Affinity. So the options are just there. So the preemptive healing is a lot better than what a Holy Priest can do in terms of renews and poms. The other thing that's really good about the Resto Druid is the fact that I can actually use my healing to heal, you know, pretty spread out targets in range. So as I said, our group right now is actually really good at healing stacked targets with 2 Holy Paladins and a Resto Shaman. And, you know, with a Holy Priest, you know, it's just a lot of healing on the melee groups. What I can do as a Resto Druid is I can focus my healing on a range group and not be punished for them not being stacked. So when they're not stacked, for example, as I was talking about those Hunters, if they want to be standing out, I can still cast my Wild Growth on them, and as long as they're within 30 yards of each other, they will still get heals from it. So that is an incredibly powerful thing to have in your raid group, and it really, unless you haven't really been playing with a Resto Druid, you probably haven't actually noticed it. So, you know, it is something that I noticed a lot during our attempts on Gul'dan. So, you know, that essentially is my main reason for that. Now, the thing that kind of highlights why this is so strong, you know, you might think that these are all kind of little issues, but already I've noticed that on Gul'dan my Druid is doing a whole lot better than what my Priest could do. I think this is... So, you know, even though it's significantly less item level, I think it's... What, in this gear? Even though I'm wearing Promises, you know, it's at least like, you know, 8 item levels or so lower than my Priest. But it just performs better, which, you know, which kind of stands out. I mean, obviously Druid right now is kind of the top dog in its healing, just because of how basically Cultivation works, and how your Mastery works, and, you know, all the kind of overlaps with the tier and whatnot. But regardless of the strength of, you know, Resto Druid, as long as it's doing good throughput, it's going to be a really, you know, good addition to the raid, just because of the utility it brings. So yeah, that's the reason why I'm switching to a Resto Druid. I hope not too many people get butthurt that, You know, again, I highlight the fact that Holy Priest doesn't have any utility. I think that's going to be a big red flag for a lot of people. But you know, I think you're pretty silly if you don't realize that just yet. But yeah, I hope you learned something, and you know, maybe we see some good changes coming to Discipline and Holy in the very near future, to hopefully increase their power level and make them actually competitive with other healers. So thanks for watching. Bye.